Welcome to Take the Exit, the podcast where we explore the stories that intersect with transportation in Illinois. Hello, this is Take the Exit. I'm Bree Hankins, the Bureau Chief of Communication Services at IDOT. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Brandy Phillips. Brandy, I will let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at IDOT.
Hi, Bree. My name is Brandy Phillips. I am the Director of the Office of Business and Workforce Diversity here at IDOT. Under my leadership is the Bureau of Small Business Enterprises and the Bureau of Civil Rights.
Okay, so one of the big programs that you oversee at IDOT is the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. And there have been some recent changes with that, and we'll get into that a little bit. But if you will, can you explain a little bit about what the DBE program is and the philosophy behind it?
Sure. So the DBE program is a program that is currently housed under our Small Business Enterprise Bureau. And what that program is actually a federal regulation that allows small firms to do business with the state of Illinois in particular. So the DBE program is offered to all transportation agencies, all state transportation agencies. Illinois is one of those state transportation agencies that utilize the DBE program. Our program is part of the Illinois UCP, Unified Certification Program. There are other certifying agencies that are grouped together to make up our Illinois UCP, and we all certify firms for disadvantaged business enterprises and qualifications for such. The DBE program, in terms of the regulation, is really about allowing firms, smaller firms, opportunities to do business with a state transportation agency, right? And the way that we go about doing that is our larger contracts, our larger firms that do business with IDOT, we require that a certain percentage of those opportunities are geared towards those DBE firms that are certified through our process in SBE.
So I mentioned there's been some changes. So talk a little bit about the certification traditionally prior to some of the recent developments. What are the requirements for, in broad strokes, for a DBE to be certified as such?
Sure. Essentially, it's about a firm establishing that they are, in fact, a small business, right? That they are socially and economically disadvantaged. Previous to October the 3rd, what that criteria looks like is that a firm would say 51% ownership of their business is owned by individuals who are socially and economically disadvantaged by way of providing that, their personal net worth statement indicates such. And if they were part of a certain minority group or gender, they would fall up under that presumptive class. So we automatically could allow a minority group, African American, Hispanic, Asian American, and so on and so forth. There are a couple others that fall up under there. There are some that do not, as well as females, to take part in that eligibility criteria for being a socially and economically disadvantaged business.
So we saw that impact current contracts that are out there and potential future lettings as well. And then October 3rd kind of occurred. And I think it's worth noting that we've sat down together before and had a discussion about the DBE program not that long ago. So things have very rapidly progressed since then. And so just talk a little bit about what that has looked like.
Sure. We received notification from the U.S. Department of Transportation that indicated that there is an interim final ruling, right? And so this IFR essentially says that moving forward as of October the 3rd and beyond until there's a actual final ruling or more guidance, that we must remove that presumptive clause, right? Essentially, what that is saying is that all DBEs that are certified in the UCP has to be reevaluated to determine whether or not they are still qualified to be a socially and economically disadvantaged business. And the way that they must do that is by proving up their disadvantage by providing a personal narrative. The IFR provides guidance on what needs to be included in that personal narrative, as well as resubmit a personal network statement. In accordance with that, IDOT cannot continue to put DBE goals on their contract until the entire UCP is completed with this particular process.
Okay.
And when I say the entire UCP, I'm talking about all the agencies that fall up under that. And so IDOT, that would be Chicago Transit Authority, that would be the City of Chicago, that would be PACE, as well as Metro. And so we need to come together as a unified body and come up with a criteria of what is deemed to be complete according to that IFR and any guidance that is along with that.
Okay, so it's not just impacting IDOT work, it's sort of the transportation industry as a whole is being affected by this. So essentially, DBEs who are certified now have to recertify. Is that a correct way to characterize it?
Yes,
Okay.
they have to recertify and submit those personal narratives as well as the personal network statement in order to be reevaluated for recertification.
Okay, so with this interim final rule and the new requirements for certification for DBEs, the U.S. Department of Transportation, that was communicated directly to state DOTs, right? So how have we been communicating and what outreach have we done to let our industry partners know what's happening and what they need to do to recertify?
This communication did not just go to IDOT.
Okay.
This communication went to any certifying body
Okay.
that is responsible for certifying DBEs, because the component of this particular piece is directly related to the certification and eligibility of those that would qualify.
Okay.
So for Illinois, that would be our Illinois UCP that I just talked about.
Right.
What we have done is our UCP have assembled and coordinated and talked through different things that we can do to move forward in order to respond and be compliant with the IFR according to US DOT requirements. And what that looks like, we have provided town hall meetings to those that are impacted by this new guidance from US DOT and informed of what the expectation is according to what we've received, to make sure that firms understand that this is of importance and that the urgency of this matter should be a priority for their business to continue not just to do business with IDOT, but to continue to do business as a DBE. I think we've had 2 town halls for IDOT. So the UCP have had 2 town halls. IDOT has had workshops with all of our districts, all 9 of our districts.
Okay.
Some of them we've had more than one. What we've been able to do is within those workshops and those town hall meetings and meeting with our UCP and that level of coordination, we've also been able to meet with a lot of the business organizations that have memberships, with a lot of these vendors that are part of our UCP,
Okay.
to be able to inform and utilize them as a vehicle for creating this sense of urgency in the market.
Okay.
Right? And so with doing so, what we're able to do at IDOT is provide a level of assistance to firms who are impacted, all of those firms that are in our UCP, and that is, I think it's like over 2,500 firms that are part of the UCP, 800 and something belong to IDOT.
Okay.
So all of those firms have to be reevaluated in order for us to move forward. And so we're taking this very seriously, and we are talking with those firms. We have consultants who are assisting our firms with developing their personal narratives. These consultants are not coaching individuals on how or what they need to put in it, but coaching them in terms of what the IFR is indicating and what needs to be included in there in order to document what their experiences have been that has led them to a disadvantage. I think it's also important to note that there are some things that have been removed from the regulation as it relates to certification, and the IFR don't necessarily touch on the removal, but provides guidance as to what it needs to look like. So what has been removed is the presumptive classes, right? So we don't have those that race and gender as part of it. The IFR is reflected of that.
Okay.
What's also no longer in there that was previously in there is discrimination, right? So we need to be very, very careful when we're letting our firms know that they need to be careful about the difference between disadvantage and discrimination, and how to write something that is significant enough to be able to point to what their experiences have been that connects them to a disadvantage.
Okay.
I personally believe that those individuals that have been certified as DBEs certainly do have a disadvantage, and they should be able to prove that with putting that in their narrative and being able to tell their story on what their impacts have been while in the United States, not necessarily outside of the United States, because
Sure.
the IFR does touch on these are experiences that you may have a business, or this is a personal narrative, and I want to touch on that. Even though we're talking about businesses, the narrative is a personal narrative. So these are personal experiences that they need to point to that connects to a disadvantage.
Got it.
And so we are working with our consultants to make sure that that message comes across, that the level of assistance that's needed in order to help folks to get to a level of understanding to create that personal narrative and submit that personal narrative and personal network statement to IDOT and whatever their certifying agency is, that it comes across very, very clear. And so, yeah, we are, our consultants are offering one-on-one assistance. They can be reached. I think we have maybe about 7 to 9 different consultant firms that are ready and available to assist. We have business organizations that have had their attorneys to look at the IFR and dissect it in terms of looking at how they can assist their membership with being able to respond accordingly as well. And they've also been very, very helpful to IDOT and just wanting to work with us to make sure that the word gets out, to make sure that folks, all 800 and some firms of IDOT, all 2,500 plus of the UCP members are aware, informed, and understand that they have the assistance and they have the support that they need to move this forward.
So do you feel like we've been successful in reaching those businesses with the message?
I think that we have, but I think that there's more work to do.
Okay.
Right.
And what are you hearing so far from those industry partners and the businesses who are impacted by this?
Folks, this is a very difficult time, and you know, we won't pretend like this isn't very impactful, right? So we're impacted as a state agency as far as what we're used to doing and how DBE is applicable to what we do at IDOT, but who's really impacted is those individuals that have to do this prove up process with those personal narratives. It's very sensitive. Folks are saying that it's sensitive. They're concerned about, you know, the messaging and how confidential their information will be.
Yeah.
Folks are concerned about, you know, how to write this in a way if they're not necessarily having to have those presumptive clauses that are used to being there. How do they make that connection? You know, will they experience and what they submit, how would it be evaluated? And so this is why we have our consultants to assist. The consultants are not part of our reevaluation process. So that's
Right.
a completely separate and different process. We have our internal IDOT staff, and we have assistance with some different agencies within that process. However, our consultants that we are utilizing to assist individuals with this prove up with their personal narrative are solely responsible for that. That's the piece that they're responsible for.
Has there been any indication of what a successful personal narrative looks like, for what are specific criteria of what would be a successful certification with that personal narrative, or is it pretty open-ended?
I mean, there's been some guidance, right? So experiences in terms of systematic barriers, you know, lack of resources in terms of you may have grew up in communities where there's a school system that does not necessarily have the resources that they need. Maybe you've experienced some situations where you've tried to get bank loans and were not able to do it for particular reasons that you can notate and document. and how that has led to you not necessarily, a business not necessarily being able to move forward in the way that they ordinarily would or in the way that their counterparts would.
Okay.
So those are different distinctions and connections that need to be made
Okay.
when they're creating their narratives. And it's really their personal, right? And it's not
Sure.
necessarily, so when I say that, it's not necessarily tied to your business, right? Your experience. It's not necessarily tied to your business, right?
Just maybe as you are becoming an entrepreneur and how those experiences would impact your ability to be successful in your business.
Yeah, but even if we're talking about the educational system, we're talking about an educational system that starts, in really elementary ages, right?
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
talking about, elementary school, we're talking about high school, we're talking about college. I'm sure most businesses did not start at that point.
Right.
You may have grew up in a one-parent household, for whatever reason. There are so many different things that can be relied upon to be able to paint the picture of what your experiences have been.
Sure.
To point to the actual disadvantage. And that is what we want to make sure comes across. It is their story. There has been some guidance from USDOT on what they're looking to see. And we've developed from that tools that can be used for their reevaluation with our analysts on how we are determining to recertify or decertify folks based on the guidance that's been provided from USDOT.
Would it be up to IDOT to evaluate, or who actually will be looking at those personal narratives and making those decisions?
That would be IDOT. So that's
Okay.
our certification team.
Okay.
So our certification team is responsible for evaluating certification applications that come in outside of the IFR, right? Before we even had this IFR,
Right.
this is what they were responsible for doing. And so we've shifted. And so now that we have the IFR, they are responsible for looking at it in accordance with the way that the new the new IFR is indicating that we should be looking at this. And so we've developed a tool and broke it down and really, really dissected it in a way so that our certification analysts are able to take what is being provided and what's being submitted and look at it against what the criteria is that the IFR is indicating in order to make a determination.
Is there another level of approval at the federal level that has to happen after we've evaluated those applications or those recertification?
So what I will say is that USDOT has the right to come in and audit us
Okay.
if they so choose. Also, if a firm feels that they need to submit an appeal, that appeal needs to go directly to the USDOT.
Okay. So what do you want to impart to our industry partners? What's the most important thing that they can do right now to move through this process?
I think the most important thing that they can do right now is to really start to think about creating something, an outline of what their experiences are,
Okay.
what their disadvantages are. And before they submit, I think that they should have a consultant or someone that is abreast to this IFR take a look at it and probably give them pointers on how to make distinct connections between their experiences and their disadvantage. Now, I want to note that, going through this process is difficult. We cannot say that because you get this assistance right, you'll be automatically recertified.
Mm-hmm.
There is a reevaluation process that must take place, right? And as much as I want to see everyone go through this process and be successful, and I think that everyone can, it is dependent upon what is submitted.
Okay.
What we are seeing is that there's a lot of submissions that have come through from our vendors that we are requesting additional information in order to make a recommendation for certification or recertification. Now, IDOT in itself has a 3-part process.
Okay.
Right. So there's the recommendation from the analyst, and then from that point, there is a managerial approval or denial, and then from that point, there's a committee that takes a look at it to determine whether or not all considerable matters have been taken into account to determine what the final outcome is.
But ultimately, we are providing resources to these firms to help them be successful in this, to do as much as we can to set them up for success.
Absolutely. I think we are. I think we're going above and beyond, and we're willing to do more. Right. Right now we're asking those business support organizations if they have a membership base with DBE participants in it. We are willing to come out and speak with their membership about it if they want us to, about the IFR. Just recently today, we spoke with ACEC.
Okay.
There was quite a number of DBEs that were in the audience who received this information that I'm sharing with you today, and we went into detail about how it impacts them and what IDOT is looking for and how to make those submissions. And so I think that many of those firms got the information that they needed. Some of them indicated that they have not submitted because they're very, very busy with their business, and we understand that. Some said that they felt like they got the information that they needed to be able to submit, and some indicated that they will be reaching out for that assistance before submitting. So we're very, very happy with that.
So you've been doing these in-person meetings, town halls, updates, workshops. Where can a firm go to keep up to date on any changes? What are you telling them to, where are you telling them to go for more information?
They should visit our IDOT site.
Okay.
If you go to our IDOT site and you are looking for the UCP, you would not be able to gain access to see any DBEs in there because right now those DBEs are in an ineligible status.
Okay.
So you wouldn't be able to see, but what you will see is information pertaining to the IFR. There's a link to the application for submitting those personal narrative and personal network statements. Any communication that has gone out, there's an FAQ sheet on there to answer some questions that folks may have. There may be, maybe we don't have responses to all of the questions, but as we get them, we're updating that FAQ so folks are able to go on there and see if we have answers to their questions right away. There's also information on how to submit comments and things like that if they have additional questions, to reach out to us with those questions and concerns.
So support is available from IDOT and from, we've reached out to their trade organizations and other groups, membership groups. What final parting words for our industry partners? What do you want them to know?
I want them to understand a sense of urgency. I want this to be a priority. I want us to look at this as an opportunity to move forward and not see this as a point to an end. The DBE program is still alive and kicking, and we have not heard that the DBE program is going away.
Okay.
It is changing, and sometimes we don't initially like change. However, we must proceed, and I want our businesses to know that they have the support of IDOT as we proceed forward. Small businesses are important to us. We're looking at developing not just continuing with our DBE program, but a small business program as well. Be on the lookout for that. Most important, and what I want to leave folks with, those that are part of our UCP that are DBEs, is that those submissions are important. Getting that information into us as soon as possible is going to be essential, and to not wait to the last minute to get those submissions in. We cannot continue forward with our DBE program until we receive those submissions. Seek the assistance that they need. If it's something that they don't understand, be communicative. Reach out to us. We are here to assist. If there is additional information that they're not getting, that we're not saying, and they feel like they need to have more before they make that submission, reach out to us to get the assistance that they need so that we can answer all questions and get folks through this process.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We will stay in touch and try to keep folks up to date on this ever-developing situation. But thank you, Brandy, for joining us today. And that's it for this episode of Take the Exit.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Bree.
Of course. Thanks for riding along with IDOT. This has been Take the Exit. For more inside information on transportation in Illinois, find us on social media or idot.illinois.gov.